Chapter 2, Part B, Methods of Enquiry in Psychology. Some important methods in psychology. Number 1, Observational Method. Observation is the way of gathering data by observing behavior, events, or noting physical characteristics in their natural settings. It is a useful tool of psychological inquiry and an effective method of describing behavior. A scientific observation consists of following criteria. A. Selection. Psychologists select a particular behavior that they want to study. B. Recording. Psychologists record the selected behavior using different techniques such as marking tallies, photographs, video recording, etc. C. Data analysis. Psychologists, after collecting data, derive meaning by analyzing the data. Types of observation. 1. Naturalistic observation or unstructured observation is a method of study that psychologists use regularly. This approach includes studying participants' spontaneous behavior in a natural environment. The researcher records everything which they observe. In this method, the observer makes no effort to control or manipulate the situation for making an observation. This type of observation is carried out in schools, hospitals, homes, daycare center, etc. Number two, controlled observation or structured observation is carried out in a laboratory. The researcher determines at what point, under what conditions, and using a prescribed protocol the observation should take place. Number three, participant observation. In this type of observation, researcher watches the events or situation or activities from inside by taking part in the group to be observed. The researcher studies behavior by becoming a member of the group. The advantages of participant observation is that it allows observation of natural behavior, closeness with the group, studying real character, better understanding and opportunity to learn more about an event. Number four, non participant observation. When the researcher observes a group passively from a distance without participating in the group activities, it is known as non participant observation. Here, the researcher does not try to influence them or take part in the group activities. The advantages of non participant observation are objectivity and neutrality, more willingness of the respondent, freedom from groupism. Number two method is experimental method. An experiment is an investigation in which hypothesis is scientifically tested. In an experiment, an independent variable, which is the cause, is manipulated and the dependent variable, the effect, is measured. The experimental method involves the manipulation of variables to establish cause and effect relationships. The key features are controlled methods and the random allocation of participants into controlled and experimental groups. What is a control group? A control group consists of participants who do not receive any experimental treatment. The control participants serve as a comparison group. The difference between the control group and the experimental group is that the control group is not exposed to the independent variable that is thought to be the cause of behavior being investigated. The control group is important because it serves as a baseline, enabling researchers to see the impact changes to the independent variable produced. Field experiments and quasi experiments. Field experiments. They assess cause and effect in relatively artificial environment. Here the participants are randomly assigned to experimental or control groups. Independent variable is manipulated and procedures are controlled. Quasi experiments where quasi means as if. Studied in real or naturally occurring events. Participants are not randomly selected, independent variables are not manipulated, and there is partial control of procedures. Number three method is correlational research. A correlation reflects the strength and or direction of the relationship between two or more variables. The direction of a correlation can be either positive or negative. A correlational research investigates relationships between variables without the researcher controlling or manipulating any of them. The strength and direction of relationship between two variables is represented by a number known as correlation coefficient. Its value can range from 1 through 0 to minus 1. Types of correlation coefficient. Number 1, positive correlation. When one variable changes, the other variable changes in the same direction. Number 2, zero correlation. There is no relationship between the variables. Number 3, negative correlation. When one variable changes, the other variables change in the opposite directions. Correlational research is ideal for gathering data from natural settings quickly. Number four method is survey research. Survey research is defined as the collection of information from a sample of individuals through their responses to questions. Surveys are the most popular form of social research because of their versatility, efficiency, and generalizability. The survey research uses different teaching techniques for collecting information such as personal interview, questionnaires, telephonic surveys, and controlled observations. Personal interviews. An interview is a purposeful activity conducted to derive factual information, opinions, and attitudes and reasons for particular behavior from respondents. It is generally conducted face to face, but sometimes it can also take place over the phone. So there are two types of interview. One is structured or standardized, and the other is unstructured or non-standardized. What is structured interviews? They use predetermined questions in a certain order. The questions are close-ended, which means that the questions can only be answered from a limited number of options, such as multiple choice questions or single word answer yes or no, or from a rating scale. What are unstructured interviews? They do not have a set of pattern of questions, and questions are not prepared in advance. Since responses are not specified in such type of interviews, the respondent can answer the way or he or she chooses to. Such questions are called open-ended questions. So an interview may have the following combination of participants. A, individual to individual, which means a situation where one interviewer interviews another person. Second option is individual to a group. Here, an interviewer interviews a group of people. Another version of this type is also known as focus group discussion or FGD. Next combination is group to individuals, where one group of interviewers interviews one person, usually found in a job interview situation. Next is group to group. It is a situation where one group of interviewers interview another group of interviewees. Next is questionnaire survey. A questionnaire is a research instrument that consists of a set of questions that aims to collect information from a respondent. A research questionnaire is typically a mix of close-ended and open-ended questions. Open-ended questions help collect qualitative data in questionnaire where the respondent can answer freely with little or no restriction. Close-ended questions are question types that ask respondent to choose from a distinct set of predefined responses such as yes or no or among multiple choice questions. The questionnaire is used for collecting background and demographic information about past behaviors, attitudes and opinions, knowledge about a particular topic, etc. Questionnaires can be administered or distributed in four ways: online, telephone, in-house or mail. Next is telephone survey. Telephone surveys are a method of data collection wherein interviewers contact respondents via telephone to conduct interviews. The telephone survey helps in reducing time. However, since the respondents do not know the interviewer, the technique is faced with uncooperativeness, reluctance, and disinterest leading to poor answers. So, what are the advantages of survey? It helps in data collection, which is quick and efficient. Public opinions on new issues or developments can be obtained as soon as it rises. The disadvantages of survey are inaccurate information by respondents, biased information, sometimes to prevent the researcher from knowing what the respondent believes. Next method is psychological testing. A psychological test is a standardized and objective instrument which is used to assess an individual's standing in relation to others on some mental and behavioral characteristic. So, objectivity here means that if two researchers administer a test on the same group of people, both of them would come up with more or less the same values for each person in the group. A psychological test should be worded in such a manner that they communicate the same meaning to different readers. Construction of a test is a systematic process and it involves some steps. It involves detailed analysis of items, and estimating reliability, validity, and norms of the whole test. So, what is reliability? Reliability of a test pertains to reliable measurement, which means that the measurement is accurate and free from any sort of errors. Reliability is one of the most essential characteristics of a test. If a test gives same result on different occasion, it is said to be reliable, which means that the test results are consistent over a period of time. Now, there are some types of reliability. A. Test retest measures the stability of the test over a time. B. Split half method measures the extent to which all parts of the test contribute equally to what is being measured. Next is validity. Validity refers to the degree to which the tool actually measures what it claims to measure. Validity of a test can be estimated by comparing the performance with some standard criterion. Norms. For a test to become standardized, norms are developed. Norm is the normal or average performance of the group on a given test. It gives a picture of an average standard of a particular sample in a particular aspect. Norms are the standard scores developed by the person who developed test. The future users of the test can compare their scores with norms to know the level of their sample. There are some type of test. A. Individual test administered by a single examiner to one person. B is the group test administered by a single examiner to several person. C is the speed test. In a speed test, there is a time limit within which the test taker is required to answer all the items. Such a test evaluates the individual on the basis of time taken to answer items accurately. In a speed test, all the items are of same degree of difficulty. And the last one is power test. Power test assesses the underlying ability of the individuals by allowing them sufficient time. These tests do not have any time limit. The items are arranged in an increasing order. And finally, the last method is case study, which is an in depth study of one person, group, or event. In a case study, nearly every aspect of the subject's life and history is analyzed to see patterns and causes of behavior. Researchers focus on cases which can provide critical information on less known phenomena. A case study uses multiple methods of data collection, such as interview, observation, and psychological tests from a variety of respondents who, in some way or the other, might be associated with the case and can provide useful information. The advantages of case study are allows researcher to collect a great deal of information. Researcher collects information on rare or unusual cases, allows the researchers to develop hypotheses that can be explored in experimental research. Disadvantages of case study cannot necessarily be generated to the larger population, cannot demonstrate cause and effect, may not be scientifically rigorous, and can lead to bias. Coming to analysis of data. So, after the data collection, the next step of the research is analyzing the data and drawing conclusions. Quantitative and qualitative analysis are two fundamental methods of interpreting data in research. So, there are two methods of analyzing the data: qualitative data analysis techniques and quantitative data analysis techniques. Under qualitative data, there are two methods. One is inductive analysis, which means the detailed reading of the raw data to derive concepts. Another one is using different computer software which are available. Under quantitative data analysis techniques, there are three ways of doing it. First one is descriptive statistics, which describe the characteristics of a sample set using mean, median, standard deviation. Okay, and the next one is inferential statistics, which makes prediction from the data which is derived from the descriptive statistics. And the third one is using different computer software which are available to analyze the data. Quantitative analysis is associated with numerical analysis, where data is collected, classified, and then computed for certain findings using a set of statistical methods. Data is chosen randomly in large samples and then analyzed. The advantage of quantitative analysis is that the findings can be applied in a general population using research patterns developed in the sample. While in quantitative analysis, it is concerned with the analysis of the data that cannot be quantified. This type of data is about the understanding and insights into the properties and attributes of the objects, where here it is the participants. The next topic is the limitations of psychological inquiry. So, what are the limitations? Number one, lack of true zero point. Psychological measurements do not have a zero point. So, the scores that are assigned to individuals in psychological studies are not absolute in nature but have relative value. Second is relative nature of psychological tools. Psychological tests need to be developed, modified, and adapted to the context of the study. For example, a test which is developed for urban children is not suitable and cannot be applied to children living in tribal areas. The next is subjective interpretation of qualitative data, which means that the data from qualitative studies are largely subjective since they involve interpretation on the part of researcher as well as providing data. Coming to the next topic, which is ethical issues, the ethical guidelines that the researcher needs to follow while conducting a psychological inquiry are: number one, voluntary participation. The participants who are potentially eligible for the study should have the freedom to decide whether or not to participate in the study. It also entails freedom to withdraw from a study even if the study has begun. Number two is informed consent. Participants should be informed about the risk and benefits of the study, which will help them to make an informed decision about participation in the study. Next is debriefing. After the completion of the study, the participants are provided with necessary information to complete their understanding of research. Debriefing ensures that the participants leave the study in the same physical and mental state as when they entered. Number four is sharing the results of the study. After collection of data and analysis, it is a good ethical practice to share the results with the participants. This fulfills the expectations of the participants and adds further insight about the results, thus developing the final conclusions. And the last point is confidentiality of the data source. Participants in the study have right to privacy, and every information they share with the researcher should be kept in strict confidence. Information should be used for research purposes only.